Everyone, it's Jen again. Hope you're having a good week, and I'm happy to report that I stuck to my development schedule this past week. I think that what I have laid out I could definitely see myself finishing by my March 1st goal for the endings for Arcane Dice Wars, but now that I'm actually playtesting the endings, I'm contemplating adding some more art that I didn't have originally scheduled, so I may or may not end up pushing that date to another week down the road to add a little bit more art assets that I hadn't originally planned, just to kind of smooth out the endings in the way that I want to present them. I'm going to get through some more of the endings and see, once I get some more of the missing art assets done, whether or not I feel like I need to. With that said, I hope you're having a good week, and this week I thought I would talk a little bit about my, I guess, reasoning for drawing in the anime style and for choosing fantasy settings. One could simplify it and just say, well, I like that stuff. But my reasoning for it, I think, goes a little bit deeper than that when I really think about it being like this very conscious choice. I've been told in the past that the kind of anime influenced aesthetic doesn't really match my stories, that perhaps like my stories would reach like the audience that it would more resonate with if I didn't choose like this style. But it's more than just like, oh, it's really cool and I like XYZ anime for me. And it sort of goes back to my whole experience growing up as an interracial adoptee in a very, very, very homogenous area where I was a complete outsider. So in the United States, there's a lot of issues that revolve around ethnicity and race. And to put it lightly, people will stereotype you. It's a bit of a double-edged sword growing up in an area that does not have an established minority community, because on one hand, people will assume that you speak English because there is absolutely nobody else to speak another language to. And so on one hand, you'll be considered safe and assimilated. But on the other hand, you will still be considered like a novelty and an outsider, like almost something to be kind of like regarded with curiosity, or I guess what you might consider like non-malicious othering, or being separated from the group, but like in a non-malicious way. So when I was growing up, the way that I kind of dealt with this dissociation in a way of like wanting to belong and feeling like inside I belonged because I was culturally raised with this group of people, but I was treated like I was different. But inside I felt like, well, I wasn't raised any differently than my non-adopted brothers, so it's only due to the way that I look that I'm being treated different. And I had this repulsion towards live action movies and stories and characters, and there wasn't as much minority representation in the media back then, but the minority representation there was like very stereotypical, and I didn't relate to that either. And I still find that a lot of that type of stuff, because again, I have a different experience, that isn't dealt with a lot in the media. I often don't really identify with either characters because I guess my experiences is just very specific. So I'm kind of used to seeing like a lot of stories from both, like, I guess, majority and minority perspectives, but I don't often see it from the perspective of somebody who was kind of like raised with a majority but treated as a minority, if that makes any sense. So as a result, I didn't care for stories that had like people that I didn't feel like I related to, but rather I liked stories with like anthropomorphized characters or animal documentaries, because sort of in those stories, and I guess my childhood brain, it was like, oh, you can have like, 5 different colored birds and they're all birds. And that's not weird, you can have a family of 4 orange cats and like 1 white cat, and that's not weird, and the white cat isn't treated differently than the orange cats for the most part, unless the story is like specifically trying to like tell a story like the ugly duckling or something. But for the most part, it's not even something that's like addressed in the story, and oftentimes with anthropomorphized characters, they could be completely different animal species with no physical traits that match, but they will never mention it in the stories. Like, it's just, oh, that's Bugs Bunny, Daffy Duck, or whatever. And I guess maybe in the context of hunting season it might be mentioned, but normally it's not something that is really addressed. And so the first time that I really liked anything that was with human characters, non-anthropomorphized or non-animal characters, was when I was introduced to JRPGs when I was in middle school, because they were so alien looking, to be quite frank. The features of these characters were like, you could tell they were human, but they were so abstracted that they didn't look like any particular like ethnicity or race to me. Even if they had different shades of skin, their shape of their eyes and their nose and their jawlines and their hair and everything were all just so alien that none of it really like looked like, oh, this person is from this part of like the world, even if they had a name or a backstory that explicitly said so. And so for whatever reason, then I became more comfortable like identifying with these characters. Like, it was my bridge from like animal characters to humanoid characters. And gradually then it might have been a maturity thing as well, but I was able to open myself up to more stories after that. So I guess that's why it has a special place in my heart. And my personal focus on my stories is more about systems, broader systems, usually more revolving around class. So for that reason, I find it more appropriate to work with these kind of like non-ethnic characters, in my opinion. And I decided to even go harder on that stance with my newest project, which I'm just calling EGT right now. But because I wanted to have them in somewhat of a little bit more of like a cyberpunky, futuristic aesthetic, I decided to go even harder on the kind of like not human, just alien personhood thing that hopefully we can all kind of relate to on one level, but not like ascribe all these other characteristics to. So I've decided to go with a more anthropomorphized anime style for that, and I'll probably talk about that more when I start working on that project more. But that was something that I really like debated with back and forth. And yeah, it's just something that I was kind of thinking about this week as I was working on like the return to home kind of endings in Arcane Dice Wars, because I'm dealing with the characters being more with like a more realistic equivalent to their fantasy character, and it is something that's been on my mind a little bit. Okay, well, with that said, take care. Hope you have a good upcoming week. If you're working on anything, good luck, and don't forget to enjoy the process. Bye now.